Lied wie der Vollweit in a Stiebel auf der Seite.
It's almost like you've lived on borrowed time, or time that really wasn't yours. In one sense, your life could have ended, but it didn't.
Sometime I go to Dodger Stadium and I look around and I figure what would happen if the government suddenly decided to take the Episcopalians or the Baptists or the Mexicans. There was an announcement, all Southern Baptists go to exit 15. It's incomprehensible how you can take everybody that I see and just wipe them out.
In school they asked me, do you have nightmares? I said, nightmares, dreams, I never do, because I live with it day and night.
They killed all my mother's family. They killed my one and only sister, that I can never forgive them. They killed my husband, who never had a chance. He was 21 years old, a wonderful person. And they killed all his family.
Why did they take away? Why couldn't my kids have a grandma and a grandpa and uncles and aunts and cousins? Why?
Es ist dein Leben in Gefahr. Mit den Kindern spiel sich fein.
Who had the right to take away their lives?
And so it gives you kind of a strange feeling on life. That this is like a special given time.
Das Kind gebeten sich bei ihr, ich will Mame sein mit dir. Sie hat ihm zugesagt, a Sach, nur nicht geholfen, kein Schumsach. Hat geschrien, nein und nein, ich will nicht bleiben da allein. Auf die Hand genommen ihm, mit a zitterdicke Stimme.
Hello, my name is Elliot Gould, and welcome to Voices of the Shoah. The Shoah was the attempted annihilation of all Jews in Europe during World War II. Voices of the Shoah includes interviews with people who survived this attempt and tell us their story. They will talk of times prior to the Troubles, when life was hopeful and memories bright. They will tell us of more difficult times, of the rise of anti-Semitism in Europe, being thrown from their homes and put into ghettos. They will also tell us of incomprehensible horrors of the death camps, pain, starvation, and a loss of human dignity. Voices of the Shoah is accompanied by a book which includes discussion questions, a timeline and overview of the Shoah, photos, detailed maps, and a comprehensive index and glossary. All the voices you will hear, with the exception of my voice, are voices of those who lived through the experiences they describe. These are first-hand stories from the people who directly experienced the beauty of peaceful life before World War II and the cruelty, indifference, and terror of war as World War II and the Shoah gathered steam.
My name is John Rauch. I was born in Vienna, Austria in 1930.
I was born in December 6, 1921, in Kaunas, Lithuania.
My name is Czesia Kingston. I was born in Lodz, Poland.
My name is Shlomo Berger. I was born in a small town in Poland, Krosno, on October the 28th, 1919.
My name is Siegfried Holbreich. I was born November 13th, 09.
The Jewish community settled in our place in 1484. 14,000 people living in the town, 7,000 Jews.
Inside the town, practically all Jews. All little stores, all little tailor shops and barber shops were all Jewish.
My father was an Orthodox rabbi. My mother was a businesswoman because somebody had to make a living.
And our home was stress, education. So all I had to do was really bring good grades, and I had not a worry in my head.
We had family gatherings every Friday and Saturday. On Friday night, after we ate, we always sang Zmirot. In der heiche Himmeln sitzt dort, ewig ist sein Meluche, hat angesagt, das Volk Israel, a Shabbos ist Menuche, oi Tochter, loi Sunane, alle auf dem Ringele, der was ist dem Shabbos great, der kann ihm gefallen. I'm going to cry, I can't sing it anymore. It's too painful, you see. It's painful to sing those songs. Our meals never really got finished until about 10, 11 o'clock at night because my father was, on Friday night, he was the king. He was the king, mostly on Passover, but definitely on Friday nights. Life was beautiful, really. I would say that in Kovna, I did not feel any anti-Semitism because we just never were around non-Jewish people.
We lived right next door to the school, and I was a very late sleeper. And I never used to get up from bed before I heard the bell. When I heard the bell ringing, I used to jump down from bed and run into the school, and at the first intermission, I used to come home back for breakfast. My parents were Orthodox Jews. I became more modern, and we just strayed from the religion. In the house, we used to wear kippahs, but going out, we already took off our caps. We wanted to be just like anybody else. We lived in a country where we were second-grade citizens.
We went to Hebrew school. Our main language was Hebrew. Like geography, arithmetic, everything was in Hebrew. My father dreamed of making me a lawyer and go to Israel. Education, yeah. This was the most important thing. Always, even in the ghetto, study hard. My sister was a good student too, and we always said this is the only thing, nobody will take it away. Not even Hitler, nobody study, and we did.
I was not so interested in studying. I was interested in playing soccer and tennis. See, I was a very well-known athlete. And this is part, I would say, I describe it as to my survival. My grandmother used to live in Auschwitz. Later, the Germans may change the name to Auschwitz. We knew the city very well because when we were in high school during the summer vacation, my older brother and myself, we went to Auschwitz. And we lived with our grandmother. We had a good time. In Auschwitz, I would say 90%. They were Jews. We stayed there the vacation. We went swimming in this river in Auschwitz. This is where the former military camp was. And this was actually Auschwitz, the concentration camp. The Germans in 1940 changed it to a concentration camp.
Summer vacation was just pure joy. We went bicycle riding and playing with all the kids from school. I went to private Hebrew Jewish school. Next to it was a German youth house. And when the boys play a ball, the German grabbed the ball, we were afraid to go and get it back. I stayed within my friends from the class. I didn't venture very far away. I was always protected.
My dad used to listen on the shortwave radio to Hitler's speeches. Jewish life just seemed to go on. It was as though it were happening in some remote, distant place.
Until Hitler came, I think we were my father was very patriotic Czech, and there was equality for Jews and for everybody. Really believing that everything was all right. I grew up very secure in mainstream Czech life.
You asked how I occupied myself. This was it, visiting relatives, playing, going to school, skating on Saturdays, visiting grandmother on Sundays. I've got a photo of my mother, father, grandfather, the Sunday before I came to England, and we look so innocent. We're sitting in a cafe, the trees are in bloom, it's midsummer, my mother's got a 1930s dress on and a smart hat. You wouldn't think anybody had a care in the world, and I was about to get on the train in order to have my life saved. My grandfather was shot in the street a few months later, and my parents went to concentration camps and got killed. And to look at us, you wouldn't have believed anything was happening.
Following World War I, Germany experienced massive inflation and unemployment. The country had to pay war reparations, which pushed it into economic and social chaos. Hitler promised to solve these problems. He promised jobs and stability, and his solutions gave desperate German people hope for a more stable future. They went along with Hitler and let some of his anti-Semitic policies slide. In 1933, Jews made up less than 1% of Germany's population. Yet, in speech after speech, Nazi leaders led by Adolf Hitler maintained that the Jews were secretly everywhere, controlling everything. In 1933, the Nazi Party takes power in Germany, democratically in an election.
While we were going to school, we were second-class citizens. And we used to fight all the time with the Polish kids. The Poles, they could smell a Jew from a mile away. When we were young, we used to have bicycles on the road, took off our caps just like any Polish kid. Kids used to run out from their houses and used to call dirty Jews and throw rocks after us. They didn't even know us, but they knew we are Jews. We were dressed just like them. We were acting just like them. Naturally, there were some of them that they were decent and that helped, but without the Polish collaboration, Hitler could not accomplish what he did.
After Bar Mitzvah, I lay tefillin every time, and I do it up to date. I promised in the camp when I survive, I will lay tefillin, and I do it till now. Polish anti-Semitism. There were pogroms, beating up people on the streets in Poland. And we were already hardened, but I never gave up. For instance, we had the kibbutz. Friday night we had services, we sang songs, and all of a sudden came the Poles and broke the windows, broke in and beat people. The police came only when it was too late. I said, next week we do the same thing, but we will be outside, hidden. And when they come, we will attack them. And they came, and we beat them up, and from that time, no more. It was peace.
With the support of German society and Adolf Hitler, Nazis boycott Jewish businesses, set up the first 10 concentration camps, burn books considered a threat to Nazi beliefs, ban Jews from working in government, ban Jews from being doctors in the National Health Service, ban Jews from teaching in public high schools and from studying in public high schools and universities. What you will see in the next testimonies is how slowly, ever so slowly from 1933 through 1938, like a cloud approaching overhead that becomes a storm, Jews and many other, quote, undesirables lost all forms of freedom.
By that time, we really began to feel a sense of isolation, a sense of being an outcast. And then the kids, used to be friends, would taunt you. And there were certain cliche catchphrases that all the kids picked up from the environment, like a filthy Jew, dirty Jew, hook-nosed Jew. Kids, some of them didn't even know what they were saying, but it was just the popular thing to say. My mother took me to Hitler's birthday parade in Vienna because I was such a pest and nuisance, because all my friends got to go, my former friends, and they got to form this cordon along the streets, and everybody was all dressed up. It was like a big festive thing. That's the only real rally, quote unquote, I went to. This was the big cheese coming to town. I saw him between other people's legs, but I saw him. Well, you know, you had a feeling this person must be somebody extremely important. It's like a Cecil B. DeMille movie. You see Caesar entering. You had the feeling this was a person of that stature. Should have been his assassin, but too young. I had the opportunity. I had the motive, but I didn't have the means.
I had sometimes the invitations to the big official balls in Vienna, where it said at the bottom, we would prefer non-Jews or something like that, on 2 invitations. And when I got them, I used to say, you send me this invitation, you know I am Jewish. Why do you send me this invitation? And he says, but you aren't a Jew. No, we invite you because we want you there.
In 1935, university admission for Jews was completely eliminated. So my father said to us, kids, you have no other choice. You got to learn tailoring. It will save you from 2 things. You'll never get rich and you'll never starve. So I started to learn tailoring. And we were 4 brothers. We were all working in the shop, and we became very successful.
We could smell the war around us. The relationship between myself and non-Jews became rarer and rarer as the time went on, because I think that they did not feel so safe to befriend the Jew. Also, it was not encouraged by the Jewish people either. We were not sure whether they were not spies for the police, and all these suspicions began to come about.
One of the Nazi myths was that Jews never did any physical work, and that Jews were sucking off the fat of the land. And so they would love to find Jews, especially Jewish women, with fur coats, and men with business suits, people who used to be bankers and people who used to be lawyers and rabbis, forced them to do this menial work on the theory that we used to be maids in your homes and now we have a chance to see you cleaning up our city.
In 1935, the Nuremberg laws were put into effect, which took away Jews' basic freedoms. Not many could envision at that time that Nazis would attempt to murder all Jews, but one law after another was added. Eventually, 400 anti-Jewish laws would be written. Unfortunately, countries outside Germany, including the United States, had quotas which strictly limited Jewish immigration, leaving Jews who did not make the quota with no place to go for freedom. Jews became increasingly desperate.
I think I never went to bed without saying, please God, get me out of here. We knew that we would be killed. How we would be killed, we had no idea. I suppose we thought we would be lined up and shot, because we knew of people who'd never come out of concentration camps. We knew of people who had been killed. I mean, there were more and more people one knew who were never seen again.
And as things got worse and worse, my mother realized that the whole family had to be got out. My father was an extremely nice man, they both were, but I think she must have been the sort of go-getter of the 2. And she decided that heaven and earth had to be moved to get us out. She did all the form filling and all the queuing, and she ran from office to office, and I have a record of all this. And the door closed in her face, and she banged on the door, and she tried and tried and tried. And the fact I know that she made all this effort to save my life has been a big influence on me.
My family was working feverishly to get visa to America.
By 1939, We were going to go, a whole group, with illegal immigration to Palestine to fight the British. I was full of life, full of desire to go and do that. They used to call me the fascist because I was wearing a uniform, but my parents were too much involved making a living. They were not involved in any politics.
We were still on summer vacation. There were placards all over the city that opening of school years was postponed for 1 week. Didn't bother me. We were happy. I mean, 1 more week of vacation, and we did not think much about, because how I visualize war was soldiers from 2 opposing countries will fight. But of course, it won't do anything to us. We are young, we are kids, we are not politically involved. No. What can they do to us? And this was in 1939, end of August, September, the war broke out. Why didn't you leave? That's the question my son all the time. He's an immigration attorney. You couldn't. They didn't let you. You couldn't. You just couldn't. Everybody was running away. They say that men, they should run. My father went with my cousin. He's a few years older than I. He took him and they went towards Warsaw. And I remember my father came back. My mother said, "Why did you come back? Everybody goes to Warsaw." He said he was on the way. He saw, I remember like now, he saw a couch. And on the couch was a woman with 2 children, and the house was burning. And my father said, "Oh my gosh, I left my wife and 4 children. Where am I going?" And he came back.
I can remember very clearly the day that England came into the war. I know that I'd just had a letter from my parents saying that they were hoping to go to Holland. I can remember going upstairs into my bedroom and crying because I said, "Oh, war started and my parents won't be able to come and I won't see them." And Mrs. Fair saying, "Vera, you're a very selfish little girl. It means a great deal more than this. It means that our boys will have to go into the army and all this, and you're a very selfish girl to be crying about yourself at a time like this."
March 1938. Hitler annexed Austria to Germany. 500,000 people of Vienna lined the streets to welcome the Nazis, and all German laws were now applied to Austria. At the end of 1938, Kristallnacht, 150 synagogues destroyed, 7,500 businesses looted, 30,000 Jews rounded up and sent to concentration camps. 4 months later, March 1939, Germany takes Czechoslovakia. On September 1st, 1939, Germany takes Poland. 2 days after that, England and France declare war.
1939, Friday, September the 1st, at 5 o'clock in the morning. We wake up and there is bombarding the whole city. We thought that this is the Polish Air Force doing exercises. Germany attacked Poland. They demolished the Polish planes. They demolished oil refinery. And within an hour we found out that we are at war with Germany. An order came out from the Polish military authorities. All young people have to retreat together with the Polish army. So my younger brother and I and a group of other boys, we started to retreat on foot. And as we were going, the German planes kept attacking us. We walked for about 150 kilometers. Finally, we see that the German tanks are outrunning us. We start to go back. During our walk back home, we heard about the big massacres. The Ukrainians were a minority in Poland, and the first thing they did is they helped them kill the Jews. And when we came back, we started to realize what is happening. We had to be afraid to go out to the street.
The conversation in my home between my father and my uncle, Moishke, was, why do they have to run? They are used to work. They are not just business people. So they will take us to a camp. They won't kill us. What for? We are non-members of any party whatsoever. To leave our home and to run somewhere to search for a piece of bread and to risk our life, there is no reason for it.
Orders came out that all Jews have to wear white armbands with blue Morgan Davids. Anybody that is not going to be caught without wearing an armband will be shot. Jews had to go out to work, shovel snow, cleaning the roads, working in the airport without being paid, without getting anything.
The Germans start to register us. All Jews, young men from 18 to 45, on a certain day you come to the railroad station and you will go to work for us. A day before the transport's supposed to go, I said, I'm not going. I took a friend of mine, dressed up, got on the train, went through South Germany, through Austria, to the Yugoslavian border. And here we got out of the train full of German military. Not one asked us who we are. We were very well dressed. And here, right from the train, we go up in the mountain. We marched all night with suitcases. We saw the border lights. And there comes this Yugoslavian soldier. We gave him to understand we are Polish officers. He took us down to the border garrison, and here the officers interrogated us, where do you want to go? We want to go to France, to join the Polish Legion to fight the Germans. He said, oh, you can go where you want to. He gave us a Yugoslavian soldier to lead us to the station. He was a German spy. And instead to take us to the station, he took us to the border and handed us over to the Germans. They arrested us. They took me with a guard on the train, a big gate, on top a sign, Arbeit macht frei, Labor makes you free, Sachsenhausen. And this was in October 1939. And this way I became not only Jew, but the first Pole in a German concentration camp.
I left for a city called Tarnów, and that was 1940. There used to be a Gestapo officer in our town. His name was Becker. He used to come into the Judenrat and say, I need 3 Jews now. One of them was a shovel. He used to take him down to a field. The guy with the shovel, he told him to dig a grave. He used to shoot the other 2. And then he shot him to get into the same grave. Every day was worse. We were not people anymore.
Rumors were going that they're gonna build a ghetto. But you know, we school kids, what we knew about ghetto? Middle Ages. But they're not gonna make it. It's not Middle Ages, 20th century. They're not gonna do it. I mean, no. What is a ghetto? What do you mean they're gonna put us where? But let me tell you, they took this street, that street, you have to go, you have to go. You went and that's it. We went to the ghetto. We were allocated one little small room for 6 people. 160,000 people in 1.5 square mile. All Jews, 160,000 Jews, surrounded by barbed wire, German soldiers with machine guns and guards with dogs.
So it came August the 9th, 1942. It was on a Sunday morning. An order came out, placed all over on every house and through the Judenrat, that all Jews, 9 o'clock in the morning, Monday morning. They have to come up to the marketplace for registration. You can take with you 25 pounds of luggage and to leave all the houses open. Anybody that will be caught will be shot. Panic started. They started to run. One started to run to the other to try to find out, and nobody knew what's going on. The Judenrat wouldn't say anything. The Jewish police wouldn't say anything. My friends wouldn't say anything. Nobody knew what was going to happen. My parents were still home. We were still 4 brothers. My sister, her husband, and 2 girls, 2 children, one of 12 and one of 8. Some Jews went into hiding, took a chance. Our whole family came out to that marketplace for registration. Everybody had to line up and wait. By 10 o'clock, trucks started to come with Ukraine SS and circled around all the people, made a ring all the way around. They started to separate old people and the rest of the people. They loaded up about 10 trucks of old people, which included my father, and they drove away. Must have been about 400 or 500 people. And within 2 hours, they came back empty. We found out later that a mass grave was prepared about 15 kilometers from us in a forest. They took all the Jews over there and they mowed them down with machine guns and killed them all there in this grave. The German prepared one street, which was about 10 to 12 houses. They fenced it around on both sides, and this is what they will be calling the ghetto. At nighttime, everybody that survived that registration was brought back into the ghetto. 15 in a room, 20 in a room, laying on the floor, some boxes, one on top of each other. This was supposed to be our life. Next day in the morning, they came, and they picked us up to go to work. My mother and my sister and the kids were still standing at that marketplace with another 1,000 or more people. And at nighttime, they marched them to the railway station, and they accumulated a full train load, 180 to a car, locked them up. We didn't know what happened with them. They didn't know what happened to us. The trains left east. My mom, my sister, and a lot of relatives, a lot of family, they took him to Belzec. Belzec was not a concentration camp. Belzec was just, they had crematoriums, they came in there, they gassed him, they burned him. I don't know anybody that came back from Belzec.
I never forget the joyful Friday nights when my father came home from the synagogue and my beautiful mother. Often I thought, why do they want to destroy this very beautiful family life? When we were in the ghetto, I thought to myself, we're never going to have more. We didn't hurt anybody. My mother was a gentle, loving person. Her main hobbies in life was her garden. One day, a Hungarian hiring person with some German SS entered the house
had been marched out of the house. And some Gentile people who were living in the next house were calling out, well, good riddance of the dirty Jews. And we were marched in the middle of the road to the ghetto.
And in rows of 5 or 6, we had to march towards the ghetto. In front of us walked a young couple. The mother had a little child on her hand and the father an infant on his arms. And one of the SS men came over to this child and said, "Would you like a sweet?" The child was frightened, and the mother tugged on her arm as to say, "Answer him." So she said, "Yes, open your mouth," and he shot right through her mouth, and the child dropped dead on the mother's hand, and she had to leave it there. And my father, who was a soldier in the First World War, said, "I thought we were coming here to work, but I've never expected anything like this." So we trudged along. It was quite a long march in this cold, and we came to the Riga ghetto.
In one room, we were 6 people. They gave enough space, like in a casket. So what we did is we hung curtains from the ceiling to get privacy. A piece of bacon was a big thing because you melted it and you had something to fry. And eggs were very valuable. Beim Ghetto-Teierl brennt a Feierl und die Schreck ist geht. Es kommen jeder Lach von die Brigadelach und von jedem Gieß. People would trade stockings, silk stockings, risk their lives really, take off the yellow stars and trade with the Lithuanians. I didn't have any more family. All I had is a mother-in-law. She was wonderful to me. We even were together in the concentration camp. She just didn't make it in the end. Somehow, I always had a little extra piece of bread. And when I would tell her, "How come I still have bread?" she would say, "Because I know how to slice it real thin." I think she cheated, that she gave me more than what she kept for herself. Because of her, really, I'm alive.
My mother gave birth to this little one in November of 1940. Jewish people usually give names after a dead person in the family who lived long life. And my father said, I'm gonna give her a name Hadassah, which in Hebrew means hope. She was the apple of our eyes. We just adored this little girl. We had boyfriends. We started looking at boys, yes, and after the curfew, we met in the courtyard, because you couldn't go on the street, and we all talk about the things we're gonna do after the war, and the war will end very shortly, we were sure of it. The stomach will be full, and everybody will have enough work.
Most of the people that are alive are people that were lucky, one way or the other. I had a few things. Number one, I spoke good German. I also looked like a German, and I was not very bad looking. Fortunately, all those things were very lucky for people to remain alive. I know what you're going to ask me. If I was ever raped, no. And matter of fact, there were some girls that decided to be nice to a German guy because so her mother could remain alive or her sister. To rape a Jewish woman or to have sex with a Jewish woman meant to be killed.
We had a friend, his name was Nagel. He worked in a German store, and he had connections with a printer making stamps for the Gestapo. He made up a counterfeit stamp, and he made false documents, Polish documents, for me, for my brother, for him, and for somebody else over there. And we decided when the time comes, we are going to run away. One day he comes in and he says that was the first part of December 1942. And he says, something is happening. What's happening? He says, too many Gestapos from all towns are coming in. We decided that we are not going back to the ghetto. We are going to hide overnight to see what is going to happen. I ran out to the Pole that had our shop. I came into his house, and I says, I got to sleep over here tonight. he didn't want me to. I almost forced him into it. I says, I'll sleep in the attic. The rules were if anybody that will hide a Jew will be shot. In the morning he goes to town and he comes back 2 hours later and he says, the ghetto is surrounded, they're killing the Jews, they're taking them out, they're liquidating the ghetto, and I want you to leave. I says, I'm not going to leave now, not at daytime. He says, I'm going to throw you out. You throw me out and I'm going to tell him that if I get caught that you hit me overnight. I blackmailed him. Got dark. I went through the fields to a little village. No baggage, no luggage, nothing. Just that little piece of paper. And I went to the train, bought a ticket, and I boarded the train.
Bad rumors travel fast, and we heard that the ghettos are being liquidated. And then, of course, came the day that they killed all the children. I was at that day in like a hospital. I hurt my foot and I got an infection, and I was in one of the barracks. A week before, Eichmann came and he said he wanted to know exactly how many children are in this camp because they don't get enough milk, so he would bring a cow. And so he counted the children, and a week later, 2 trucks came and the children were playing, and they took all the children, put them in trucks, and none of us ever know what happened to the children. And the night when the women came from the work and the children were not at the gate, I still can hear the screams, the screams. When I was freed, I worked a short time in a place where they killed cattle and sheep, and every time the sheep cried, I could hear the mother screaming when the children were taken.
We fought to keep our sanity. Surprisingly, in ghetto, there were a lot of books. The lady who had a library before the war, she brought it to the ghetto. And we used to, pay a little bit and take out books and read. If you read, you forget the hunger. We made amateur theaters, tap dancing, singing, just anything to try to keep the sanity. But we had hope, we were young. Of course they will come, somebody will come. The whole world couldn't die on us. We tried to meet and talk about Israel, about anything, just not about the hunger.
You lived on a volcano, you think you're going to blow up any minute because your stomach is so full of nerves from fear. And they emptying out the building, and the Gestapo standing in the streets with dogs. The trams are ready for our building, next door building, clearing out. And we're still laying there in the quiet, and we hear all this going on. The shouting and the yelling, and it's getting quiet. We think everybody's gone. We can hear the trams, chuck, 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 away. But they are left standing on the opposite side by the church, the Gestapo and the SS. They come back in the courtyard and they start ripping down the sheds, and the very big the iron bar going across with a big lock, and they ripped that off with crowbars. And of course, when they come in, they see us all there. We were discovered. But there was about 700 or 800 people were hiding. And we were amongst those people. And when they come in, they had these big, I don't know what it was, truncheons or wooden sticks. They made us come out, and we all went out in the street. We stood like outside in the buildings. And one of them was strolling up and down and looking at us lot. And he says, who's the oldest Jew here? So of course he saw this man with the beard. He took it for granted he's the oldest Jew. You're the oldest Jew. Was that your idea about hiding? Whack, whack. He hit him so.
A couple of days later, they came to our apartment. I start screaming, "Mother, they're gonna kill us all. You can hear the Germans, they're gonna kill us." And with the dogs, till today, I wouldn't pet a dog for no money in the world. And my mother said, "What should we do with Grandma?" My mother said, "If I wouldn't be able to walk, would you leave me?" I said, "Of course not, you're my mother. That's not even a question." She said, "But you know that she's my mother." We didn't know what to do with Grandma. My mother and my aunt went over to Grandma's bed and they dressed her and we walked to the railroad station. They squeeze you in cattle cars. There was not such a thing as 60 people or 80 people or 90. They just pushed you in. They said to take so many kilos of, in a suitcase, your private belonging, and be sure to put your name on it. Everything, deception. There was a pail of clean drinking water and a pail for toilet facilities. It was August. The heat was unbearable. The pail with the drinking water was gone in 5 minutes, and the other one was overflowing. A lot of people suffocate and just gave up, and you put them in the side. There were not too many children, but if there was a child, it was sitting. Finally, they unbolted the cattle cars. And you know, cattle cars are higher. They didn't give you a stool to go down, just jump down. So a lot of people fell down, and it looked like an Dante's hell. The German running with the big dogs, screaming, schnell, raus, in the lights. This I remember distinctly. Even when I was in the United States already years, when I saw those big lights, it scared me. They said, "Leave those suitcases belonging where you are, just go like that." My sister was a very pretty girl, blonde, blue eyes. She said, "Where am I? Tell me, have mercy in your heart. Tell me, where am I?" One man said to her, "I cannot tell you, but not a nice place." He said, "Give away the baby, and she has a chance to live." We said, "Ma, give away Hadassah. She will go in front of us." Was another little girl, about 8 years old, Kosha. "She will take care. Come with us, Ma." And the little one held on to my mother like chains. My mother said, "No, I go with the baby and with my mother, but you try to survive and stay together." And we went to the left. And I cried very loud. I wanted my mother.
When we got to Auschwitz, which I didn't know it was Auschwitz, I did not know nothing about it. I did not know about concentration camps. I did not know what was going on at all. When we got there, they told us, "Raus, raus, raus," and they start separating women from men. Cries. It was just terrible. The husbands were from wives, the mothers from sons. And it was left and right, left and right. I went to the right. They told me to go to the right, the assessment. And can you imagine the screams? The mother was going to the left, the daughter was going to the right. The baby's going to the left, the mother's going to the right, or the mothers went together with the baby. Oh, I cannot explain to you the cries and the screams and tearing the hair off.
And in front of us was the infamous Dr. Mengele. He said, "Quiet, no screaming. Sunday is the family day." I said to my sister, "I don't care what day is today. How long can it be to Sunday?" Not longer than 6 days. We went quietly because it's Sunday, you know, what can you do? You couldn't say, "I want to go." And we were ushered in a long auditorium and told to strip naked and hair shaved all over, and had a shower, a real shower with the soap. And after your hair is shaved and they give you a funny dress, no shoes, no underwear, we did not look human. And that was their purpose, to make us subhuman. This was Auschwitz, but we didn't know Auschwitz. Even if they would tell me, I didn't hear of it. I didn't know where, what, and nobody knew. And there is a sign, big sign, work makes you free in German. No, we are young, we're gonna work, and Sunday is a family day. I did not know that there were crematorium in Auschwitz when I was there. After the war, when I went, with my daughter, I said, how could I be so stupid not to see it, not to know that they are... I saw why. Auschwitz is 19 square kilometers big, so maybe my block was very far away, and I didn't see.
This unbelievable situation of people being... You could smell these people being burned. All the time you smelled this. It was a little bit like, you know, when people used to boil glue. It was the bones that smelled like glue.
I closed my eyes and I made a vow that whatever they're going to do to me, I want to survive. I don't want, I'll never let these people kill me because why? Why are they doing this? And so many of us. I mean, there was 1,000 people to one block, and there were 30 blocks in that enclosure. Now, I was standing with my sister and other friends at the wire fence, where all of a sudden we recognized a boy from our town on the other side. And I said, hello, Mickey, what's happening? What's going to happen to us? He said, just don't scream, don't cry, and stand straight like a pole. They have guests, I have parents. There's a crematorium. I said, what is a crematorium? And he told me that we have no more. Our parents have been killed the first night and he is working there and you may not never see me again. And this is what they're denying today, that it didn't happen, but it did. As 2 weeks later, I and other friends of mine were taken to the crematorium to clear away the things. We had to clear away the clothes and whatever was in them, put and dig and that went on for quite some time. Working outside the crematorium, taken out in the morning and brought back at night.
In the concentration camp, we were digging trenches for German soldiers. Our group was 1,200 women. We slept on straw, 10 women in one tent, and it was cold, and in the morning our hair would freeze to the tent. And we used to laugh at each other because we had maps on our, behinds, because every morning when the whistle blew, we had to jump out of our tent, and if you didn't jump out fast enough, then you got 25 beatings on your behind. And the Germans were very thorough. The one place they didn't follow us was in that restroom, which was, of course, on the field, an open space. It's just that the air wasn't very good there.
They beat us up and they chased us around. When you return from work, at night you stretch out on the straw sacks, but they don't let you rest. They're coming through the doors, through the windows, with water hoses. They spray you, regardless of summer, winter. They step on you, and there was no rest. We always were prepared to accept something cruel. And every SS man had his specialty. So when we saw an SS man coming, we were prepared already. And many people died. We couldn't resist the Germans. They were heavily armed, and we had no arms, and we were undernourished. In the morning, before we went out, always 10, 15, we assembled no sidurim, no prayer books, nothing, but we prayed by heart. There were people who knew it by heart. People were watching, we shouldn't get caught, because they would have killed us for it. We knew every holiday. We didn't have no calendars. When our holidays came, we got the special treatment. The Germans. They knew, oh, tomorrow you have Passover. We will give you Passover. They took away the food. All New Year's. We show you what New Year's means. We know everything. They chained us together on the train. We're traveling. I look out through the window, and the stations we passed looked so familiar to me. Closer and closer to my hometown. An hour later, we stop. I look through the window, Auschwitz. So after 3 years being in other two camps, we didn't even know that other camps existed. We had no communication, no newspaper, nothing. And here's Auschwitz. And I know every building. They tattooed us right away. But not everybody was tattooed. They made selections. And they selected the sick ones, the old ones, and the children right away to the gas chamber, to Auschwitz II, to Brzezinka, to Birkenau. Only the people who were still capable to perform some kind of work were tattooed.
And every morning we would walk to the fields, and I would put my shovel on my shoulder, and I would entertain the women. I would sing. And of course, the most popular song was Sag nicht keinmal, als du gehst am letzten Weg. Vom Himmel bleien verstellen unser Weg. Kommen wird noch unser ausgewählte Shoah. Es wird erfolgt an unser Volk, wir seien da. Das Lied geschrieben ist mit Blut und nicht mit Tint. I can't sing. It's I can't. Anyway, see this song, Sag nicht keinmal, I can't sing it because. But then I would sing funny songs, like I would sing Brennen sollt ihr alle wie die Lichter lachen. The Nazi would say, ja, das ist sehr gut. Because when I would sing, we would walk faster. All of us were hungry and cold and frozen. We were barefooted. And it was snow, but luckily I didn't lose any toes, I didn't lose my feet, and I'm still dancing. Schwarze Kascherlach reist man, und grüne lässt man stehen. That was my very favorite song because I would mimic the Polish accent. The Polish Jews speak different. And the women would start laughing instead of crying. All Liebe haben wir beide gespielt. Völlig Dreiviertel, your pom-pom. And I guess this was also helpful for me. Very often when we marched home, that same guard would pull me out and would say, the women cry, why don't you go in the front and sing? It was hopeless. The good guards used to tell us, why are you suffering? In the end, we anyway have to shoot you all.
The Germans periodically rounded up Jews in the camps, where the weakest would be chosen for death.
You know, they were quite often selection. They told you to strip naked in front of the Germans, and if you had the smallest blemish, you were not good.
They put my mother-in-law in the bed line. I couldn't let her go by herself. I just got in, and this old guard saw me. He said, what are you doing here? And I said, my mother is here. He hit me over the head, and he took me out because he said, we need good workers, which in a way really saved my life. I had mixed feelings, you see. I wanted to go with her, yet I also was afraid. The pull for life is very strong.
There are many instances of resistance in the Shoah, prior to World War II, in the ghettos, and even in the death camps. The resistance ranged from spiritual resistance to active armed struggle, from underground organizations within ghettos and camps to partisan fighters in the forests.
Auschwitz-Buna, this is Auschwitz III, the majority of the inmates were Jews. The SS asked us about our professions. I said, I'm a pharmacist. They said, tomorrow you start to work in the hospital. So I, in Auschwitz, never worked anymore physically. My work, my activities in the camps was only to work against the Germans. We slowly took over the management. We had, for instance, Jewish kapos, Jewish barrack elders, in the office, assistants, secretaries. We had mostly Jewish doctors and nurses. Then you come to work in the hospital, you do your job, you treat the people as good as you can. There was no prescriptions. I had 30 to 35 people laying on pneumonia. The SS-man, the administrator, who was responsible for the hospital, once in a while put on my table 12 sulfur tablets. And 12 is enough for one person a day. So what I do with 12, I have so many people. So we decided we have to give it to the young ones. So I turned to him, I said, you gave me for one person, but I have under 2, 3 young ones I would like to help. He could take out the gun and shoot me for the question. He walked out, went to the SS camp, and after maybe 1.5 hours, I see I have here more tablets. So I could save another 2, 3. He didn't talk a lot much, but he was a decent man. We tried everything just to cheat them to save lives. This was our purpose.
Already by the second day, we had an organized sabotage group. At each point, there was one person, one key person, to ruin the grenade. The first step was the leaving out of the sulfur from the mixture. That was in the laboratory, up in the filling room, when there was no control. The next one was damaging the wing of the grenade. I don't remember every step, but one of the steps was to damage caps, to not tighten the caps too much. If there was control and you couldn't put it through, then you managed to make a sign so that the next person knew that they had to do damage to the grenade. So I was the last one in the chain, and my job was throwing the grenades in a way that the caps got damaged. And I learned it quite quickly, so that I'm quite sure that after a while, there was hardly ever a grenade which managed to come through, slip through, in a decent condition, in a usable condition.
They came on order from the German Labor Department that all people that don't have no jobs have to register to go to Germany to work. And the Poles did not want to go to Germany. So they ran away to the forests. And I went with them. And that's whether I like it or not, I became part of the partisan group in the forests.
Partisans were underground fighters who resisted after their countries were overrun and occupied by the Nazis. Shlomo Berger became part of a Polish secret fighting group. This partisan group was made up of non-Jews, and because the members were anti-Semitic, Shlomo had to keep his Jewish identity hidden.
Most of the time, we were not so active. Everybody over there tried to survive and wait for the time. The times will change. There were local people there. They had hidden arms. They got their rifles out, and their guns, and everybody was given a rifle. And whenever we had a chance, we used to mine the railroad tracks when we saw a military transport. We used to mine it, and whatever we could get out of these transports. We knew guys that used to be army people. They knew how to make small bombs. And we put them under the railroad tracks, and we left. We were hiding. We picked places where there was a turn around that you can't see when you are coming. And usually these trains were very little guards with them. This way we had ammunition, we had arms, we had all kinds of things, but basically we did not get involved in combat with the Germans. We tried to be nuisances. We knew the forest like our own hands, so they could never catch us. I pretended to be a Pole Nobody knew that I was a Jew. Anytime they were talking about Jews, they said, the only good thing that the Nazis did is that they killed the Jews. These same Poles that had trouble couldn't stand the Jews. We were in these forests till the 29th of March, 1944. By March 1944, the Russian army advanced, and we joined up with the advancing Russian army.
There were other forms of resistance. Amazingly, in the camps and ghettos of World War II, some continued their religious observance.
2 years in Auschwitz, during Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, I organized religious service. In my barrack, in the re-educational camp, we were between 15, 20 men. All day we prayed, lighted candles. We had one doctor. See, here I break down. Dr. Jonas Silva, he came from France, from Strasbourg. He know to daven everything. We had another Dr. Unikova. He was a lawyer from Breslau. He knew the whole Chumash by heart. It was very dangerous that we be caught. The young people, I told them to watch. Once they pretend they're working, and then somebody would come from the SS nearer, they would immediately call attention to it.
One day I fainted, it was cold, miserable, and one lady had extra sweater and she gave me. She wrapped my hands and said, fight it, fight it. Towards the end of November, I went to one of the girls. She was the youngest, a red-headed girl, not more than 12, 13. The reason she lived so long because she was very tall for her age. I said to her, I think today is the birthday of my little sister. Let me celebrate with you. Let me share my bread. She looked at me and she said, Sesha, I don't want your bread, but if you want to celebrate with me, bring me water to wash myself. I went over to this lady I knew and I said, give me some water for her. And she gave me a cup of water. I ran with this cup of water like it would be most prized possession you ever saw. And I gave it to her. She looked at me with such glassy eyes. And then she said to me, Tsesha, I didn't mean water like that. I meant water all over my body, all over my face, all over. I said, oh, of course, this you will have right after the war, but take it. Of course she took it, but you know what? Next morning she was dead next to me. She just gave up, didn't want to fight it anymore. I am an optimist, I believe. I believe strongly. It must be end of the war, my gosh, it's coming already. I was 6 weeks in Auschwitz. After 6 weeks, they sent us out.
By November 1944, America and other Allied forces were successfully storming through Europe, and German leaders saw the inevitable end. Nazi officials ordered the destruction of all records and all camps, an attempt to hide as much evidence of the atrocities as possible. Camps were evacuated and hundreds of thousands of people were marched toward Germany.
One day they came, it was already January 45, cold, slippery, muggy, every good thing. They said they're gonna liquidate the camp and we should go on the march. And they knew that Allied forces are coming, we didn't know. And I said to my sister, I am not coming, no matter what you will say. And she said, all right, if you're not gonna go, I won't go either. We're both gonna die. They're gonna abandon the camp and we will die, as simple as that. And I couldn't let it be on my conscience. I said, okay. I went over to the girls and I said, come on, If I can do it, you can too. Come on. She looked at me. She said, no, but you know what? I have something of great, great value, and I want to give it to you. And I said, no, keep it, because after the war you will need it. She said, no, it's too late for me. And I thought, what could she have? She had to have something little. And she produced the smallest little piece of soap you ever saw in your life. She said, in a free world, you have to be clean. Take it. We embraced and we cried for a long, long time. And I never saw her again. We had to march. So my sister is older. She gave me her shoes. And she took some old schmattes from rags and wrapped like everybody else. It was January 1945. It was so slippery. Cold, no food, nothing, that if you slipped, you couldn't get up. There was no way in heaven you could get up.
The Russians were advancing again. And we had to get out of the camp. They didn't let us there to be liberated. So we had to go on the so-called death march. You had to keep up, because if you fell down, they shot you.
It snowed, and we were walking, no food, no nothing. And when we were resting, we just flopped on the snow. The snow was building up on the shoes. It was just terrible.
We were already starving for 5 years. At the beginning, they shot you right on the spot. But after a while, why waste a bullet? Let them freeze to death. And we walked for days and days. When the Germans got tired, we stopped, and then we couldn't get up. That's why they called the Death March.
All my energies were concentrating in going on, in holding on as long as, if you felt that it was the end of the war. I thought, well, if I got through until now I don't want to die anymore.
Lo and behold, we come to the port. We saw boats, real boats. Schnell, raus, fast. So we went, we pushed ourselves on the boats like sardines. My 2 cousins, all my friends, everybody. It was an air raid, end of January. And the Germans, with the machine gun, with the dogs, ran to the bunkers. I pinched my sister and I said, they are human. Take a look, they're afraid. They left us on the boat. One of my girlfriends said, I am not staying on the boat, I'm coming down. So 14 of us, we went down. I, my sister, 2 other sisters, and we lay down to sleep. We said for the rest of our life, we want to sleep. When we got up, the boats were gone. We were heartbroken. Our chance to the free world, to Sweden, Switzerland, but we didn't know that the boats had holes in the bottom. And an hour and a half, all of them were drowned. My 2 cousins and all my friends, all of them drowned.
We marched 4 days, and I think in 4 days we probably made a whole 4 miles. My girlfriend and I were horse number 1, and we just tied ourselves with the rope, and we were dragging the sleighs. The guard said, and those were his words, he said, children, I'm leading you to your freedom. He knew that we will never make the Alps because we just didn't have the strength. Each time somebody died, he would stop to bury the dead. Suddenly it was like tohu vabohu. Everybody was running. Germans were running, guards were running in all directions. There were some barracks, and they were deserted. And he told us to lie down in those barracks and lie flat. Suddenly, there were 2 Russians, and believe it or not, one of them was on a white horse, like you see Moshe. We crawled out on all 4 from the tents because we couldn't walk, and we were crying. And he said, you are free, why are you crying? We were crying because we really couldn't believe it, we were free.
we heard distant shooting. Quite a few of us panicked inside this barn. We thought they come and shoot us, they must have shot already others. And the noise came nearer and nearer. And as we then dared to go out, we saw all our guards, the SS women and Schulz, being shot. They had to stand in a circle, and the Russians just didn't ask any questions, and they shot them. Whether anybody was decent or not, they shot. So that was the hour of our liberation.
We're always imagining that when we are liberated, we're going to be dancing and kissing them, and I don't think they wanted to be kissed by us, to be honest. We didn't think of it that way. We didn't think we were so dreadful, you know, but to them we looked absolutely awful, of course. But all we wanted to do is to lie down and be allowed to be ill.
And as I was lying on the floor, almost dead, covered in sores, I saw this terrible, it seems to be gigantic tank coming through the gates, and hearing a terrible bang and seeing the German guard falling on the floor dead. He was shot. This huge tank, it looked like it was reaching up to the heaven. It was so big, this tank, and an American soldier came off there and he just picked me up like a piece of flag from there and said, "My child, what's wrong with you?" I said, "I don't know, but put me down." I saw for the first time, face to face, a man who was colored, and the gentleness of this person. You know, I said to myself, well, I don't often say a prayer, and in Auschwitz I did say once, if they say there's a God, it's not true. And I just said a prayer in my own way, thank God. That they didn't do to him what they do to my race. And this is the God's truth. I came out on my floors, I was free, and I sat down. And I said to myself, now what? No mother, no father, no sister, no brother, but I'm free. And I said, I got to survive.
We heard on the radio that the war was over, which was on the 8th of May, 1945. I went alone out onto a field. I lay down on the warm earth and began to cry. And it was the first time that I had a terrible sadness about the people I lost. And came a young girl, anything between 15 and 18. She saw that I still had my uniform on so that people would know who I am, that I'm not a Nazi or anyone like that. And she knelt down and embraced me and kissed me like a sister. She was very sweet. And these were the first normal human words that I have had. A number of people from the camps, they heard that in the forest nearby there were some SS men were hiding, and they went to hunt them with guns, and they invited me to go as well. I could not do that. And at the time I thought, is it a weakness? Is this a strength? Am I soft-headed? Because these murderers deserve anything. I couldn't do it. Later on I thought about it and I haven't regretted it. Even to this very day, I feel that I couldn't adopt the same approach to them as they have to us.
By 1945, I came back to my town. I looked around. There were about 25 Jews there. Survivors that came back home. The Zionists were transporting Jews from place to place to get them out of Poland. Nobody wanted to remain in Poland. I came into the committee in Krakow, and I knew the girl that was in charge. And I looked at the very beautiful girl that's standing right next to her. So I made a date with this girl. And I said, I'm going to marry this girl. She was also a survivor. I decided that it's time to leave. I took a group from Krakow to Krosno, including her. We made up some papers. I prepared myself concentration camp uniforms. Everybody was wearing the striped uniforms. We went a whole group to the train, and we were going to Czechoslovakia. In the train, I tore up all my documents, all my pictures, and I put on a concentration camp uniform. We all became Greeks, going home from the concentration camps to Greece. I changed my name to Shlomo Harari. Harari is like burger. We came to Czechoslovakia. We were traveling in these open trains. People were coming out. They brought food, clothes. We changed their clothes. We came into Hungary. We are in a town that's called Debrecen. On the 8th of May, firing, shooting, music, bands playing. Germany capitulated. The war ended. We are free people now. About a week, and we got married. I met her the first part of May. We got married the 18th of May.
We were freed by the Russian army. A lot of people who were freed by the Americans died from overeating. We were not that lucky. We didn't get much food. We were starving even after we were freed.
They did establish hospitals, and I went to hospital because I had typhus, and people around me were dying. And I could see the look on their faces. I knew when they were going to die. And I refused to look at myself in the mirror. I said, I'm not going to look in the mirror, because if I see that I'm that ill, I'll die just of the fear of it. There were German doctors and nurses still looking after us. I remember a German doctor coming, and he looked at me and he told to these Germans, it was in the evening, she won't last till the morning, about me. And I said to myself, that's what you think. That really gave me strength. I was very frightened, I can tell you, but I refused to go to sleep because I thought I'm not going to wake up. So I used to stay up every night and slept during the day. Well, I just sat up and I wouldn't go to sleep, and I even tried walking around.
After liberation, many survivors hoped to find family with which to build a new life. Unfortunately, for most, that was not to be. 2/3 of European Jews were killed in the Shoah. Thousands of Jewish communities no longer existed. Jewish life in Eastern and Central Europe was essentially gone.
All I remember is just walking out of that station and walking through Prague on my own. And a lot of strangers all of a sudden. Of course, the first thing I did was to go back to where I used to live. I don't know what I was expecting, but obviously there was no one there because they were all dead. There was an office in Prague where you had lists and lists of people who came back. And I went to see these lists every day, hoping somebody would come back, I knew. But none of the family came back at all. So I just remember walking around Prague being absolutely devastated, feeling that, I was alone in the world. The hope was gone, because until then one had hope that there'd be a small group of people one knew, some relatives, some friends, and one would start life again, have a community, get married, have children, and carry on. But there was absolutely nobody there whom I knew. I was 17.
We thought we going home, everybody be alive. Any Pole what you met on the way and ask, oh, all of them are alive. He said, go back to your hometown. They are all back. We came back to Poland. Nobody was alive. I went to school in Poland, back to school, yeah. So I was the only Jewish girl there. They were saying like this, thank God Poland is without Jews. Thank God, we don't need them. And I was scared, so I dropped out. We lived on the second floor, and downstairs on the first floor was the young girls and boys on the way to Israel, right after the war. I knew most of them. I knew most of the young girls between 16 and 19, 18. The 1946 was the pogrom in Kielce, and they killed them all, 42 girls and boys. They cut off their heads. I said, I am not staying one day here, not a half a day, I'm leaving. Those all were young survivors from the camps.
In Sachsenhausen, I stayed 2 years, then 1 year in Großrosen, 2.5 years in Auschwitz, and the last 3 months in Nordhausen. So altogether 5.5 years. The war ended, the Americans marched in. The second day I joined the American Army as an interpreter and as an investigator. Right the next day when the Americans came, because nobody could communicate with them. I still remember English from high school. With his friend, with his prosecutor from Poland, I worked with the War Crimes Commission for 1.5 years, helping preparing the trial of Nuremberg. We asked them, could we go from camp to camp and collect records? And we took trucks, and we went from camp to camp and took every piece of paper, the records, because the Germans kept very good records. But not only about the prisoners, but about themselves too. In fact, when we went to the barracks, to the SS barracks, we removed from the beds the names of the SS. This is proof. In 1946, I came to the United States, and in 1946 started the trial of Nuremberg. I was not at the trial. It gave me some satisfaction. Later on, I was called from the United States 3 times to be a witness at the Sachsenhausen trial, the Auschwitz trial, and the Großrosen trial.
The communists, the first thing they did is took away 3 factories. Since I spoke good German and good Russian, I became the manager from one of the big salami factories. And this was my beautiful revenge over the Germans. They were horrified of me. They called me Kleine Chefin, little boss. I was only 24. They were more or less our prisoners, even though they were free to go home. But to work in our factory meant life. At night when they left, they steal a salami, but I knew how to look. I asked the big chief to give me a Jewish boy as a helper, and I volunteered to stay at the gate when the Germans were going home from the factory. And I would walk back and forth, and I could tell by the face whoever was hiding something, and I would drag them out of the line, and I would say, search him. One man got on his knees and he kissed the toes of my shoes, and he begged me to let him work, and I said no. And then one of my friends said, if you walk out of there, maybe he'll kill you. I said, I don't care. The pleasure of telling him, no, you cannot work here, because he was stealing a few salamis, I said, I think that brought back my sanity. I could do anything I wanted. I could put them in prison, I could tell, but it was just the satisfaction. Take their vodka and tear it in as many pieces as I could, and that would make me happy. And when they would cry and they would say, this is the food I have to bring, I said, you at least remain alive. But when you people found something that we were bringing home, you killed us. After a month, I couldn't do it anymore. One day I came home and I was crying. My girlfriend said, what's the matter? And I said, the pleasure of being mean is over. I can't do it anymore. I don't want to do it anymore. I knew I was free. After this, my husband, who also found out that I was in Berlin, sent for me, and with help, we escaped Berlin and went to Munich, and Munich was the American zone.
Most survivors left their birthplaces for a new home in a new country. Usually that meant Palestine or America. The transition was difficult. Most lost their entire families. They had to learn a new language, fit into a vastly different culture. They possessed nothing except memories and the desire to start life anew. Most consider themselves as having two birthdays now, the day of their birth and the day of their liberation.
My father was never the same. He was never the same person who came to America as the person that I remember 2 years before. A lot of the wind got knocked out of his sails. In Vienna, he had a certain stature among his friends, a certain standing in the community. And when he came to America, all those things meant nothing. He was very literate in German. Didn't mean anything because nobody wanted anyone to speak German or to read German. The people in America were beginning to hate all things German. And he had to take on very menial jobs. It really changed his personality.
I would tell you, in spite I was already free, but still I feel a certain pressure. I didn't feel liberated. What liberated? Where's the family? All is gone. My sister I found in Germany. She went to Israel, to Palestine, illegally, and she has a daughter. It was very hard to adjust. My relatives, they were extremely good to us. They tried so hard. Every day, every evening, parties and parties. When people came from the town, from Cleveland, to meet us, how are you? And so a question like, how do you like America? My gosh, I said, what kind of questions? I came in, I'm just from the boat. And he asked, how do you like America? And then, oh, we suffered too. We had rationed meat and sugar. And this went on for weeks. Finally, I said to my wife, I cannot take it anymore. It's too much. I don't know where I am. I want peace. I want to settle down and start to work and find myself. So I told him, sat down with my cousins. I said, listen, we are extremely thankful. I appreciate your reception, the way you treat us, but it cannot go on forever. We want to start to work. We could settle. We want an apartment. My wife was pregnant. But there were many times I was thinking to return to Germany, to go back to Europe. It was hard for me to adjust because I was not a young person. I was already, when I got out, I was 35, 36 years old. I was used to a normal other life.
I liked it right away. I liked it right away. We came to a very loving family, my husband's family. I know they had probably the best intention, but everybody told us, learn English, be American, but don't talk about. And we were full of pain. We wanted to talk. Nobody wanted to listen. Sometimes I think maybe they didn't want to face the fact that they were silent, that they didn't have this power to do anything. Sure, you found a nice person who listened to you, but on the overall, that's what it was. The survivors community became closer. If one found a job, oh, I have another job for you, come on. There was a lot of compassion, and we always talk still. Everybody was extended family. We always talk about, even today, there is no funeral or wedding or bar mitzvah. Where were you? So how did you know this one? Did you know that one? All the gatherings, what are they? We're still looking. We're still looking for a familiar face.
We came to America on the 9th of May, 1950. The next day, I went to work. I got a job immediately. America was very good to me. Within a year, I had a car. Within 2 years, I bought a house. I stayed in business for about 25 years, a liquor store. Then I retired at the age of 58. I took a real estate class, And I was 13 years working in real estate in Beverly Hills. We have a son, a physician. We have a daughter, a marriage counselor. In Poland, I would have nothing. I would have been a worker all my life, even without the war. This was not a place for young Jewish people to grow up. If I wouldn't be that stubborn and taking risks and have some luck, I would have never survived. Poland was a very anti-Semitic country. There were some good people, but most of them were very bad. The Catholic religion, their teaching was, when you get up in the morning, you say the prayers. You said, the Jews killed Jesus. We got to learn to be tolerant. You got to treat all people equal.
High school is free. You know how expensive it was in Poland? I couldn't imagine. And universities. I mean, you work, you have the money, nobody asks you if you're Jewish, and wear a yellow star in front and back, you are free man. And that's why any injustice, it hurts us, because we know what it means to be abandoned and left to die, because the whole world, they didn't care about us. They just didn't care. They could have bombed and saved 10,000 Jews a day, but they bombed 2 miles away the IG Farben company. So they didn't, they stumbled on us.
My parents died in Auschwitz when they were 57 years old. What I'm missing is my close family and my Chaverim and Chaverots from the organization. The majority got killed, but still people got away and they're living in Israel. This was it. This is life. Telling the story, it is not easy. You cannot enjoy it, but I feel it is my duty to go out and to talk to students, to young people, to old people. I don't care who it is. I'm always ready to help. And I feel by relating it to those people, hopefully it will help and there will be less anti-Semitism, less hate. And I'm being questioned, asked, what do you feel? Can this happen ever again? I said yes, and not only to Jews, but to everyone, and everywhere in every country, and any time. This is my purpose. There are survivors who never opened up, never actually told their children what's going on.
I have a son and a daughter. I was one of those who could talk, some couldn't.
I cannot help it. I will hate the Lithuanians and the Nazis and the Germans as long as I live.
Like a session like now, for instance, at night for sure, because I'm thinking about it, I would start to dream. And often my wife wakes me up, "Sick, what's going on? You're hitting around, you're hitting me." And in school they're asking me, "Do you have nightmares?" I said, "Nightmares, dreams, I never do, because I live with it day and night."
Sometimes they ask me, "Do you hate the Germans?" What a question. I don't hate the new generation, they didn't do anything to me, but the one who did to me. Why did they take away? Why couldn't my kids have a grandma and a grandpa and uncles and aunts and cousins? Why? Who had the right to take away their lives?
One of the Nazis once, not one of the bad Nazis, the good ones once said, you don't look Jewish, you must have some German blood. Why don't you go through one of the checkups and you can get out? And I said, what for? If all the Jews will be killed, why should I remain alive?
Going through all those miseries in the camps and the sicknesses, how come I went through so much in my life? Well, not only bad things, good things too. We enjoyed, we had a very good use in life in Poland. We had natural trouble, there was anti-Semitism, but we were able to resist and to fight. And I asked myself, how come you survived where so many millions got killed? I said, I have only 3 reasons. Very lucky, a very strong willpower to survive, and number 3, is the most important, having faith. Regardless what religion you practice, but you have to feel that somebody is leading you, is watching over you. And this is the most important thing. This is destiny.
It's almost like you've lived on borrowed time, or time that really wasn't yours. In one sense, your life could have ended, but it didn't. And so it gives you kind of a strange feeling on life. That this is like a special given time. There is a dehumanization process which has a lot of psychological impacts. You can't shop at the store this day, next day is a rule you can't go to the swimming pool, next day you can't sit on this bench, next day you can't go to this school, next day you can't buy shoes, next day everybody gets 2 ration coupons to buy bread, but you get only 1. I mean, I couldn't imagine in England or Canada or Australia, the United States, overnight somebody taking millions of people to camps. But I can imagine scenarios where people begin to set limits for certain segments of the population which are accepted by the majority because it's not so terrible. So Jews can't go to Santa Monica Beach. Big deal, they can go to Redondo Beach. That's the dangers to watch out for in a so-called free society. Yeah, I saw that happen. I saw its impact on people. I saw, my father was not the only one. New York in the 40s was filled with Central Europeans whose life, they were like people on a life support system. They continue to function as human beings, but their whole reason for living had kind of been destroyed because they were like the trunk of a tree with the branches, but the roots were just cut off. To this very day, I have an abiding fear of black and white cars and motorcycle cops. Not because I'm anti-police. I'm a very strong law and order person. But the idea of the police as a possible hostile agency never really leaves you. It's a very strange phenomenon. I'm a lawyer, but when a traffic cop stops me, I feel like I'm being grilled by the SS. Ruth and I were in this hotel, the White Elk. It's an old inn in Salzburg. And in Austria, when you check into a hotel, you have to give them your passport. They have to check you out with the police. This must have been 1980 or 81. I gave the guy my passport. Then there was a ring in the hotel room. I picked up the phone and the guy was on the line. He said, "Mr. Rauch, I have wonderful news for you. All former Austrians returning to Austria, we have a 25% discount on the room rate." So I said, "That's wonderful." Then I went down and we got to talking. He said to me, "When did you actually leave Austria?" I said, 1938. He said, "No, 1938? Why would anyone leave then? Those are the good days." I said, "Well, it depends on your perspective. For me, it wasn't one of the good days. When we got the bill, there was no discount."
$5.8 million Jews and hundreds of thousands of gypsies were murdered in the death camps. In addition, 3 million Poles, political prisoners, homosexuals, and others considered enemies of the state were killed in the prison, concentration, and forced labor camps throughout German-occupied Europe. 1/3 of the total Jewish population was wiped off the face of the earth. Many Jews who survived left Europe to find a new life in Palestine, soon to be Israel, England, Australia, Canada, and the United States. Others were trapped behind the Soviet Iron Curtain, forced to remain in lands controlled by communist rulers. In the late 1980s, as communism fell, many descendants of surviving Jews in what was the Soviet Union emigrated to Israel and America. We hope you will use the accompanying Voices of the Shoah book and the additional audio material that follows to learn and discuss more about the Shoah of World War II. You can also explore more online by going to our website. In the following sections are individual stories. One from a Jewish soldier who fought for the United States during World War II and liberated Dachau. Another from two soldiers, Japanese, who fought for the United States and are first-person witnesses to prisoners liberated from a sub-camp of Dachau. You will hear the heroic story of a Jewish rabbi stationed in Germany in the aftermath of World War II. Then you will hear from a man whose parents survived the war and of the effect the Shoah has had on his life. Finally, you have the opportunity to hear the dramatic and beautiful testimony of Dana Schwartz, who survived the Shoah as a child by hiding in a small rural village, carefully concealing her religious identity.